Good morning. Well, first I want to thank ISBCAN for this opportunity to learn from such an inspiring group of experts, and also to thank the government of Lithuania, this peaceful and beautiful country, for hosting us. What I would like to share from Jordan's side are 3 lessons that I believe are essential for any experts, for any experience, present or future. First one is coordination as a turning point. The real change comes when coordination is institutionalized by adopting a unified idea of coordination that brings all sectors together under one national framework, which clear rules and responsibilities agreed upon by all. Responses become stronger, more consistent, and more accountable. The second one is prevention as investment. Awareness alone cannot stop violence. Real prevention means investing in families, mental health, parenting, and reducing poverty. When we use the language of investment, governments understand that prevention is not only social policy, but also sound economic policy. The third one is changing attitudes, not just training. Building capacity is important, but real transformation needs people who truly believe in protecting children, not just staff doing a job. Social workers, teachers, health, and police must adopt respect, empathy, and zero tolerance for violence as part of their mindset, not only their duties. And finally, let us not forget what remains of the children of Gaza still alive today. They feel abandoned because neither the Convention on the Right of the Child nor any other agreements or treaty has protected their most basic and most important right, the right of life. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be here today. Thank you so much to ISBCAN, and what a beautiful country. I'm feeling very grateful and also especially inspired to be amongst all of you. It's just been incredible to see the level of work that's happening at the moment in this space. What a motivating and energizing environment to be in. So thank you so much for all of your work. I wanted to share some of the challenges I believe we're facing. I come from a UK perspective, but I think these are very much challenges that can be applied globally, and something that I'm really picking up from the global peers and connections and collaborating partners as well. I think generally, as we know, the sector is severely underfunded, and that is probably the most significant challenge that we have. That's both in the UK and globally, and I think in the UK in particular, I can speak to quite a competitive, challenging, and difficult environment, just in terms of how organizations are working and the challenges that we're facing, and it does create an environment of competition. So, I think just the importance of fostering that friendship, that unity, that sense of trust, that collaboration could not be more important. Secondly, it's, definitely, I think, the stigma and the taboo of this issue of childhood sexual violence, of violence against children, And, it is just very challenging to engage the public, to engage everyone, because of how, traumatic and triggering. And, for many people, it is just too horrible. And I think that is a huge barrier in engagement and in people taking this seriously, in people, listening and engaging and trying to get people to understand just the scale and the prevalence of this issue. And, it's a huge problem. I think many people would, they would much rather look away and brush it under the carpet. They just can't face it. So I think, it is just so important that we are doing all we can to smash that taboo, to break the stigma. And part of doing that is talking about it, is speaking about this on an everyday basis. It's uplifting survivor voices. It's paying attention. The more that we talk about it, the more that we break the stigma on these issues, the more that, we'll be able to engage more people, and people will feel more confident and feel that they have the language to discuss these, to tackle this, and to speak out against this as well. The other issue I'd say is probably on, in every country, these kind of widely held misconceptions on the issue, the beliefs, the existing beliefs and the narratives that people have. Firstly, that childhood sexual violence is inevitable, that it's just too big of a problem and it's always going to happen. And we know that's not true. We have the evidence now, and we're building that evidence that we have the solutions. And, they just need to be invested in. And it's about mobilizing the governments and the funders and the people with power to take this seriously and to invest, because we can solve this issue. It is preventable. The second is this belief around this issue is being perpetrated by monsters, strangers, that this isn't our issue. This is something else that's happening in a dark alleyway and it has nothing to do with us. This is massively problematic, and it really works against the reality of this being a collective global issue that affects all of us, that we all have a responsibility in tackling. And finally, I know I don't want to take up too much time, but this kind of growing hostile social political landscape that we're existing in, the rise of online extremism, the rise of extremist right-wing rhetoric that are, perpetrating upholding these traditional gender norms that are leading to the objectification and control of women, which eventually leads to violence against children, violence against women and girls. And then also in the UK, and I think globally we're going to see more of this, and this is definitely happening in America, but the politicizing of prevention and a lot of our interventions, sex education, relationship sex education in schools as well. And then we also have pornography, AI, online harms, this kind of whole new world, these whole new landscapes that are transforming the way young people are experiencing sexual violence and online sexual violence. And the lack of understanding, I think, from many an older generation, and these generational gaps in understanding the lived experiences of young people. So to conclude, essentially, it's really about galvanizing this global movement, incentivizing everyone at every level of society to engage, to take this issue seriously, and to create that political will. And I think, I come from a grassroots campaigning perspective. I shared my story and it went viral, and hundreds of young people shared their stories, and then thousands of young people shared their stories. And then, we started a movement. 50,000 young people spoke about rape culture and sexual violence in UK schools. And then the government responded. And then they launched this review, and then it forced all schools, all institutions in the UK to take action and take this issue seriously. So, it really just starts with one person speaking out. We all have the capacity to make a change. So thank you so much. I think it's been an amazing experience to be here, and it's just a privilege, and thank you for your work.
I love that picture. I'm such an 80s baby. Good morning. It is a joy to be here with all of you today for the first ever Rise Up Policy Forum. Thank you, Pragati, Bess, ISPACAN colleagues and team, and our incredible hosts here in Vilnius for bringing us together for these vital conversations. This Congress has been energizing, it has been inspiring, and has given us a much needed boost, and I know today will do the same. There's a popular adage, may you live in interesting times. And friends, we certainly do. After nearly 20 years working on research and policy advocacy to advance gender equality, violence prevention and response, and child protection, this moment feels uniquely uncertain. We see more conflict than at any time since World War II, shifting geopolitical dynamics, shrinking aid and domestic budgets, and a troubling backlash against human rights and democratic values we once thought were secure. That said, times have always been interesting, and the one constant we can count on is change. With that in mind, I'd like to share a few messages as we move through the day. First, you cannot change what you cannot see. At Together for Girls, I've seen firsthand the power of evidence-based decision-making through implementation of national violence against children and youth surveys and the corresponding data-to-action process. As aid budgets tighten and governments rethink priorities, measuring and understanding child maltreatment must remain central. Investing in data, in innovation, in evaluation and learning, and in scaling proven approaches isn't optional, it's essential. Second, our budgets are a statement of our values. Investing in children is a moral imperative, and it's smart strategy. Countries that protect and uplift children build stronger economies, safer societies, and more stable futures. The cost of violence is enormous, but the return on investing in child well-being uplifts individuals, families, communities, entire nations. We must shift the conversation from one of scarcity to one of abundance. Third, we are all advocates. Whether you're a policymaker, a practitioner, a researcher, or funder, you have a voice, and that voice matters now more than ever. Fourth, decision-making to protect children must be inclusive. Nothing about us without us is more than a slogan, it's a standard. When survivors, children, youth, and practitioners help shape policies and programs, outcomes improve. They're not tokens, they're experts. Inclusive policy and decision-making isn't just ethical, it's effective. And finally, as we've heard from several of our speakers, collaboration is key. In moments of scarcity, we can be driven to retreat, but we are stronger when we come together. When we share resources, combine expertise, and find new ways to partner, we multiply our impact. Nelson Mandela reminded us that history will judge us by the difference we make in the lives of children. As we look ahead, let's carry that truth forward to those who hold power, as advocates, as allies and collaborators, and as a community committed to creating the conditions for all children to thrive. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. That's not an 80s picture. Just need to clarify that. Well, I'd like to join really the previous speakers in sharing what an honor it is for me to be here and a privilege to speak, and to thank ISPCAN for this great opportunity for us to really share and bounce off ideas on how best we can improve child well-being across the globe. So I will share a reflection, just building on what CHRISSY said, from a researcher's perspective, and really reflecting a lot on the Global South perspective. I want to point out some of the gaps that we see still in the research that we are undertaking, and how plugging these gaps could help us make a step forward, even as we work collectively with policymakers to influence both policy and practice. Some of the gaps lie in how we generate, interpret, and use evidence. As a sector, we have been very good at describing the problem. We know prevalence, we know the types of abuse, we also know the risk factors. But we have done far less to understand why harmful practices persist, how change actually happens in different contexts, and what makes prevention efforts sustainable over time. Much of our research still remains fragmented, externally driven, often reflecting donor or institutional priorities rather than the lived realities of children and families and communities. We also tend to privilege quantitative indicators over qualitative insights, which means that the voices of children and caregivers, their reasoning, their fears, their resilience, are often missing from the evidence base that shapes policy and practice. A critical barrier, as CHRISSY said just earlier, is the limited translation of research to action. Our findings are frequently presented in an academic or technical format, and this does not speak effectively to policymakers or practitioners. We have not invested enough in co-creation, in designing research with communities, governments, implementers, so that the evidence is both relevant and actionable. As researchers, we must reflect on the power and positionality. We need to build strong national and regional research ecosystems that are essential if we are to develop contextually grounded solutions. So a few thoughts and questions for us to ponder on. How can we better capture the social and cultural dimensions in child protection beyond conventional survey data? What models of research policy, practice collaborations genuinely lead to systems change? How do we build sustainable local research capacity that drives innovation, accountability, and ending violence against children? If we address some of these questions, then we will have made very positive strides in transforming rather than just describing the problem. Thank you very much.